So I'm continuing work on this cupboard today by making the backboards. I'm going to use tongue and groove joinery for those, so I thought I'd take a minute to show you how I make tongue and groove joinery by hand.
I started out by thicknessing the 3 backboards to 1/2 inch thick and then hand planing the faces with a smoothing plane to remove the machine marks. Next, I used a jack plane with a cambered blade to clean up one edge of each board and make the edge square to the reference face. Then I used a joiner plane with a flat blade to straighten the edge. If you're interested in the detailed process of doing this, check out my video on flattening and squaring lumber by hand. I'll put a link to it in the description below. In this case, extra care is required since the stock is so thin. If you have a long grain shooting board, this would be a good time to use it.
So I'm going to use a metal or iron style tongue and groove plane to make these backboards. But the principles apply whether you use a plane like this, a metal plane like this, or a pair of wooden match planes. The idea is to get your boards aligned. Now in this case, you can see I've aligned my boards the way that I want them in the back of the case. And on the outside or the back side of the case, I've drawn my cabinet maker's triangle, and this is going to help me keep these boards arranged and aligned the way that I want them. Now, this is going to be on the outside of the case. In this case, this piece is going to go probably against a wall or against a couch or something like that. So I could leave this triangle on here after the fact, or I can take it off. I will likely end up planing it off just to clean it up a little bit. But that's really not what's important. What's important is that I know which face these are, because I want to reference my fence of my plane when I use it against the inside face of the backboards. So this face here is what is going to face the inside of the cabinet. So that's where I want to reference the fence of my plane. And I want to be consistent, and every joint that I cut, I want to reference off of the inside of the case. So that's what I'm going to do. Also, I want to be careful that I know what is going where. So I'm going to label these. So let's say we're going to put a tongue here. We're going to put a groove here, which means this one has to have a tongue and this one has to have a groove. And again, I can take these marks off after the fact. So now that I know which board is getting, which edge rather is getting which part of the joint, now I can go ahead and plane the joint, referencing the fence off of the inside face of the board. So I've decided to plane the tongue edge first. So this one gets a tongue. I've got my plane set. So right now it's set so that it cuts the groove. So I'm going to swing the fence around so that it cuts the tongue. Now again, here's my cabinet maker's triangle and my T to tell me this is a tongue. So I'm going to place my fence against the inside reference face, and I'll start at the end. And I'll work my way back gradually. So this way I'm establishing where that tongue is going. And you notice I'm not really using the handle. I'm mostly focusing on holding that fence against the board. And this oak is some tough stuff, so it's going to take a little bit. Okay, that's about it for the tongues. This is the second board. So I did both tongues first while the plane was set up for cutting tongues. Now, one thing you might want to keep in mind, when you're using a plane like this, you really want to try and maintain, keep that plane vertical. If you happen to pull it a little bit towards you, tip it, with a plane with tolerances, tight tolerances like this one, you're going to get binding, and you're going to find it very hard to push the plane. But also, you could break this tongue off. So focus on keeping the plane upright. A little wax doesn't hurt either. So now I'll flip the fence around. And now this plane is set up to cut the grooves. I'm going to do the same thing. So this is my groove. This is my inside face. So my fence will reference my inside face. Again, start at the end. Work my way back till I'm taking full-length shavings. And then the plane will register itself nicely, and I'm just going to keep moving this way until it stops cutting. It has a built-in depth stop. So once I get to depth, it'll just stop cutting. And one thing to keep in mind, in really hard woods like this, sharp irons, light cuts are really going to be the rule of the day. All right, now before we fit these to the case, let's make sure they go together well. Now again, this is a very, the plane is very precisely made and to very tight tolerances, so it's going to be quite a tight fit. If you have a vintage plane, chances are there might be a little more slop, so the fit may not be quite as tight. Okay, now this is the back side. You can see they're a little proud here, but that's okay. The reason for that is because we did all our referencing off the front face. And you can see the front, or inside face of this case now, is nice and flush. The joint's nice and tight. So this is ready to fit to the case. All right, so the first thing I want to do when I'm going to fit these to the case, I'm not going to worry about the length just yet. I just want to focus on the width. As you can see, these two outside boards are too wide, and I need to mark them for width. Now, as you can see by my shirt, we're in the middle of summer here. It's about 2/3 of the way through July, and it's pretty hot and pretty humid. So I don't need to leave a lot of space between these backboards, but I do want to leave a little. So to figure out how much space I'm going to leave between the backboards, I turn to one of my favorite little tools or tricks in the shop, and that's a deck of cards. This is an old deck of cards. It's missing a few. Find that deck of cards in your house that's missing a few cards, or maybe they're old and worn out. Put them down in your shop because they're fantastic for all kinds of things. I use them for fitting door frames. You can use them to fit the reveal around your doors. Here, I'm going to use them to put a little space between these backboards. So again, because this is the middle of summer, and I'm in Virginia, it's quite hot, quite humid. So I'm going to leave a little bit of space, but not too much, because these boards are likely going to shrink as the year goes on. So I don't want to leave too much space. So I'm going to take a couple of cards, and that's what I'm going to use as my spacers here. I'm going to put 2 cards in each gap, and that's going to leave me a little bit of room for expansion just in case it gets even more humid than it is here, which I can't imagine how that's even possible. But so now we're going to knock this back together with the cards between, and that's going to give me a little bit of space between the boards. So now that I've got my space set, I'm going to arrange this so that this middle board is about centered on the case. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just kind of taking these and eyeballing them, because I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to make a mark. Now, you can see here that there's a rabbet that these backboards are going to sit in. So I want to mark the inside of the rabbet. After I get these all centered and to what I think looks good, I'm going to mark the inside of the rabbet on each one of these end boards. Now I have a mark on each one of these and I can rip them to width. So when I ripped them to width, I left a little extra space at the outside as well, about 4 to 5 cards worth. Again, that's to allow for seasonal expansion and contraction of these backboards. Now, I'm not ready to put these on yet because I have to wait for the top. So I don't want to put the backboards on before the top goes on so that I could butt them up against the top. And for that reason, I haven't cut them the length yet either. So they're all hanging over down here. This one will be trimmed off here and then cut to length at the end. The others have already been cut here, so they just have to be trimmed down this end. The other thing that I can't do, I can't put this back or the top on because my door, which is a single board like this, that's going to have some piercing and some carving in it. This door is going to be attached to the case. It's going to be hung on hand-forged dovetail hinges, and those hinges will be attached to the case with clinched nails. Therefore, I need access to the inside of the case to be able to clinch the nails on the inside of the case when I hang this door on its hinges. So I cannot put the top or the back on until this door is hung. So for now, these backboards are done until I can hang the door and put the top on. So this will be the next part of this project.